Alrighty, hello everyone, welcome. It is 4 o'clock here in Brighton, UK. I am today here, I want to say welcome on behalf of Michael Ball and myself, who's joining me as my co-host today. There's a few people rolling in still, but we'll make a start now. So today's session, actually I'm jumping the gun, today's session is one of our partner-only webinars on some of the new features that are coming through in Totara 13. And today's session will be covering the new dynamic audience rules that have been introduced. I'm expecting it to be quite a quick session today. Dynamic audiences aren't new to any of our partners, and going through these rules, most of them will probably be pretty quick wins for you to understand, but I will go through and talk about some potential use cases on those audiences as I go through. Now, a couple of bits of housekeeping before I get started. So the first thing is that we are, of course, a partner exclusive webinar. We ask you not to share the slides or the recording with any of your customers as they are in this current state. This is designed for you guys, the partners, and is aimed and as such. As I said, I'm joined here by Michael Ball. He is sitting there on the chat waiting for your questions. So please do post them in the chat. Michael knows Totara very well, so he'll probably answer a few there, but I'll be taking regular stops and answering any questions that you might have. A reminder that this session is recorded, so we're recording now, and the recording will be available for your review on the partner area of the community in the next day or two for you to go back through. Anyone who is listening in the future, hello, welcome, thank you for listening. And if there is any questions that you think of after the session or any discussion that you might want to have on the topics that we cover today, there will be an associated forum, the products update forum or the partner general discussion, where we would encourage you to post those questions so that everyone can benefit from both the question and the answer. So let's get started. Let's press the right button. So there are a number of audience rules that will be introduced in Totara 13. I've put them here 1 to 10. Really, there's actually 11, but I thought 11 was a bit of an odd number and didn't quite fit on screen. So item 6 is actually split into 2 things, even though they're very, very similar. So let's go through those. Actually, before I start, anything in the chat there, Michael?
Nope, nothing at the moment.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Right, so the first rule that I want to talk about has indirect reports. So just a reminder that we're talking about dynamic audience rules here. So this is where users have or do not have one or many indirect reports. So these are managers who manage managers. And this is, you can see the interface here. This is something new that we've done around none, at least, no more than, and exactly, and then a field for entering the number of people. And this can be used to direct different training for maybe escalation. So a manager's manager may have to deal with mediation between managers and staff and escalating particular issues. And this audience rules can be used to direct those users to that specific type of training. Next one is the number of direct reports. Now, this is actually an updated rule. Before we has direct reports, and we've modified that so it has that same interface as we saw in the previous slide around indirect reports. So we have that none, at least, no more than, and exactly option. So that's, like I say, an expanded existing audience rule. And this might be used where the skills required to manage a smaller team might differ from the skills required for a larger team. And this can then again be used to direct learning to those individuals that have a large or small team, or maybe just a one-to-one team, maybe a very, very small team might be quite a different skill set indeed. Moving through, any questions in the chat there, Michael?
Nothing for you yet.
Excellent. I know this is relatively straightforward, I'm hoping. We won't take up too much time for people today. So the next rule is temporary managers. So this is where a user who is associated as a temporary manager to one or many users, again, a very familiar interface for you, can be set and created an audience, can be used to generate audience membership. And this is really useful for people that maybe have been assigned manager rights or access to individuals maybe unexpectedly, due to the manager being, off sick or on some type of leave, or maybe for the first time that they're taking over those staff management tasks. And this can then direct users to that kind of just-in-time training and support, using course visibility and course enrollment. Next one is has appraisees. So this is where users are associated with one or many other individuals as their appraisee. So a bit like temporary manager associated as temporary managers, this is where individuals have appraisees associated with them. Again, this very familiar interface where we can select the number or type of filter and the text field to enter the number. So for example, if the user is an appraisee to two people, the skills required to process those forms and maybe the internal processes of being an appraisee are different from those that are maybe an appraisee for 100 employees. So it might be the difference between a team leader and an HR team member, for example. So different types of skills and training required. So Mike, did you want to weigh into this particular role and talk about how it applies to Perform?
Yeah, I suppose it's a pretty simple explanation. Is we've used the same roles that are existing in current Learn. So temporary manager was mentioned, manager's manager, and appraiser. So they will all apply. So these rules will also apply to the new Perform functionality.
Excellent. Thank you. It's great having you here. Is there anything in the chat that I need to go through?
It's all quiet at the moment. I don't know if that will prompt anyone, but yeah, you're all good at the moment.
Okay. Lovely. Get that screen going. Next one requires a little bit of explanation, so bear with me. So it's the ability to have multi-select fields used within organization types as a rule. So when you create an organizational hierarchy, in that same area, the frameworks page, you can create different organization types. Now, not everyone uses them, but they are a helpful identifier. And a type might be something like distinguishing a particular organization or framework from that whether they're a team, a department, a field office, a location, a project group, for example. And you might, when you create these types, so this screenshot here shows the type. I've got two examples here. One of them here is called project group, and you'll note that that here has a custom field. So you can add any number of custom fields to a organization type, and that might be to collect or display both information relating to that particular organization type. So using the example project group, I've here got a custom field which is based on multi-select field, and this will be familiar to those that have used it across maybe seminar fields, for example. Multiple select is really applicable in that area. So I've created a number of different created one multi-select custom field for this particular organization type, and given it three values here. You can see short-term, mid-term, long-term, in this case, projects. Within the dynamic audiences area, this is translated to this screenshot you see on the left here. And you can create a rule based on an organization's type or organization type and that multi-select custom field within the type. So using this project example again, you might want to have different skills or training or a dashboard or different learning plans for individuals that are on short-term versus long-term versus mid-term length projects. Hopefully that's the hardest one to understand. So moving on to user creation date. So we can create a dynamic audience role based on users whose accounts have been or will be created before or after a certain date or period of time. So it's a complicated sentence, but you can see from this screenshot here that we have got different options before or on a certain date or after a certain date. And then there's a relative or period of time. And this might be to identify new users or users that are going to be created and perhaps enroll them in induction training. Flipping that around, that might be a way to identify older accounts and maybe individuals that might need to be go through retraining or reinduction or maybe just re-engaged across your LMS. Any questions, Michael?
You have one, which is, are these in Evergreen already?
Some of them are, not all of them.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want to know exactly which ones, I recommend you go to the What's New page in the help documentation. And on that page, just do a page search for audience role.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. That was
Some of
Mark
them.
Edmonds, and he said, "Thank you very much."
You're so welcome. Next one is job assignment ID. So this is users with or without one or many associated job assignment ID numbers. So the job assignment ID field, when you create a new job assignment, is a unique value field. So it can be used to differentiate different job assignments that have the same name. So an example would be product manager. So we have product managers at Totara, and there would be the Learn product manager, the Perform, the Engage, the mobile app, etc. product manager, but the job assignment may be product manager. And so if you want to create an audience for product manager, but it's specific to people as the Learn product manager, you would pick up everyone else. And the ID number, because it's unique to this individual and across the system, you can collect that using this dynamic audience role. The other advantage of this, other than just having a unique identifier within the system, is that often the ID field for a job assignment or role comes from an HR system, and then they'd have a unique identifier, which is typically numerical, which will be able to capture this within this dynamic audience role. Moving on, we are on the home stretch. Now this is one I don't think is an evergreen. I could be wrong, but this is a really interesting one. So this is historic course completion. So this is where a user has or has not previously completed a certain course. Now this is different from course completion because this is also captures historic or archived course completions from courses within a certification. So there had been an issue with some people that may be removed from an audience when the recertification window opens on one of their active certifications because it's saying, no, you've never completed this. This will take into account any archived course completions. And similar, this is the one that I combined into two for the convenience of my OCD and the design of these slides. And this is historic course completion date. So very similar in terms of it taking into account those archived course completions for within certifications. But this is based on a certain, whether the user has or has not previously completed a certain course on before or after a certain date or time. And I've just shown you both of the drop downs here in these screenshots. And nearly there. So next one is course enrollment. So this is where a user is or is not enrolled in a certain course. No, this is different from completing a course. It's just that they're actively enrolled in it or not enrolled in it. And this can be used to manage companion or co-requisite courses, or maybe alternative courses. So you can collect everyone who is not enrolled in a certain course and enroll them in another course. And it can also be used to maybe capture people that are studying towards a particular goal and assign them dashboard access that contains certain links and resources that might be useful for them. Anything in the chat there, Michael?
No, you're doing extremely well today.
today, thanks. And last but not least is program assignments. So similar to the course enrollment, this is whether the individual is or is not assigned to one or many programs. Note that this doesn't include certifications, it's just program assignment. And this might be used to enroll learners in additional follow-up courses, or maybe even just simplify the catalogue view by removing all other programs from view for them. So they focus just on the one set of courses. And across all of the different audience rules that we've gone through today, and all existing audience rules, of course, these audiences can be used to filter the content of reports. So the more dynamic audience rules that we have, and the collection of users we have that's more accurate for their learning needs and their management needs, the better in terms of reporting as well, and all filters through. So I was
You have one question.
No more questions?
No, you've got one.
Oh, excellent. Are you guys just feeling sorry for me now?
So Richard Chambry has asked, will there be certification assignment as well?
Not for 13, but it is something that we'll be looking at in the future, I'd imagine. There is certification enrollment, or completion rather, which kind of ties into it a little bit. So if you've completed it, you're naturally enrolled in it. So you can kind of use those in the meantime.
And then another question.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have plans for creating a rule for user has role assigned? For example, user's editing trainer role in the course, in any of the courses on the site?
I mean, possibly. I'd have to go through the tracker and see if there is that already raised. I had just honestly had a feeling that we already had that audience role, but I could be mistaken. But let me have a look in the tracker once we've finished this session, and if not, we'll raise it. If so, then we can link you guys to that request so you can see it in the issue tracker.
Yep, I'll record the question.
Excellent, thank you. Were there any other questions?
Oh, and then there is a question from Kenny. You could technically do that via other audience.
Other audience.
Sorry.
Oh. Okay, I'm not sure. Are you talking about the roles or the certifications?
Okay, yeah, sorry. That was to answer the previous question.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I had kind of thought that if we went over 30 minutes that we'd be in trouble. So we're sitting here at around 20 minutes for today's session, which I think is about right for the amount of content that we've gone through. But are there any other questions, or are we good to go?
I think that's it at the moment. Any last minute arrivals?
Well, thank you so much for everyone who has joined. Very much appreciate your time. If you do have any questions, as say, do jump into the community area and post any questions or comments that you might have.